Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're ready for some amazing stories of how ordinary people turned their lives around and became millionaires, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into an incredible tale that's bound to make you believe in the impossible. But be warned, you might just feel a bit inspired, or a little jealous, by the end. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on more fascinating stories right here on Stories TH. Also, drop a comment, letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is in your area. I love hearing from all of you. Now take a deep breath, relax, and get ready for today's story. It's going to be a wild ride. Billionaire falls in love with poor girl. Discover the true power of love beyond money. The perfect life of a billionaire. Liam Rivers had everything. He was in his early 30s, a self-made billionaire who had already achieved what most people would only dream of: power, wealth, and influence. His empire was vast, spanning from tech to luxury real estate. His name was known in every corner of the world. On the surface, his life was perfect. The Manhattan penthouse, the fleet of sports cars, the glamorous galas, and endless business meetings that never seemed to stop. To most people, Liam was the embodiment of success. He was a man who had carved his path to the top from nothing, a true testament to what hard work, ambition, and a sharp mind could achieve. He woke up every morning with a sense of purpose, his schedule packed with back-to-back meetings and business calls, but still, something was missing. Despite all his accomplishments, despite all the money, Liam was lonely. He didn't need anyone, at least. That's what he told himself. His closest companions were his team of advisors and employees, but no one truly knew him. No one could get past the cold, calculating exterior that he'd carefully constructed. His past relationships had been nothing more than fleeting moments of excitement, nothing that lasted long enough to matter. His ex-girlfriends were all beautiful women, of course, but there was always something missing. They were either too focused on his wealth or their own ambitions. To them, Liam was just another stepping stone, a golden ticket to a life of comfort and status. And Liam? Well, he knew that. He could never trust anyone. As he stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, overlooking the glittering lights of New York City, Liam couldn't help but feel a deep sense of emptiness. The city below him was alive, buzzing with energy, but it all felt so distant. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts, a reminder for yet another charity event he had to attend that evening. He sighed. Another night of fake smiles, shallow conversations, and business deals disguised as goodwill. He put the phone down, staring at his reflection in the window. He didn't need this, but there was something about being seen, being in the spotlight, that kept him coming back to these events. His public image was everything. People admired him, but did they really know him? Did they care? Liam didn't have time for love. He didn't believe in it. Not anymore. Love was just another distraction, another trap for the weak. That's what he'd learned over the years. And besides, who would ever love someone like him? The amount of time and energy he put into building his empire left little room for anything else. There was no space for anyone else. But all of that was about to change. It started innocently enough at a charity gala he didn't want to attend, but had to. His public relations team had insisted. "It's good for the brand, Liam. You can't keep hiding from the world." And so, there he was, standing at the edge of the ballroom, a glass of champagne in hand, pretending to listen to a conversation about a new tech startup that was supposed to revolutionize the industry. He wasn't interested. He never was. The conversation was drowned out by the noise of laughter and chatter around him. He was used to it by now, used to the hollow conversations, the constant chatter about the same things over and over again. But then, something caught his eye. She wasn't like the others. Isabella Monroe. She stood by the corner, away from the crowd, her eyes scanning the room as if she didn't belong there. Her dress, though elegant, wasn't as extravagant as the others. It was simple, understated, but she carried herself with a quiet confidence that immediately caught Liam's attention. Her long, dark hair cascaded down her back in soft waves, and her eyes, they were different. They weren't full of calculation or expectation like the women Liam was used to. There was something in them, something raw and real. She was talking to someone, but Liam couldn't hear the conversation. What he did hear, however, was the way she laughed. It was genuine, not forced, not like the phony laughter that echoed around the room. It was real. And that's when he realized he wanted to know more. He wasn't sure why, but in that moment, Liam felt something stir within him, something he hadn't felt in a long time, a spark, curiosity. And before he knew it, he found himself walking toward her, his heart pounding in his chest. "Excuse me," Liam said, his voice smooth but tinged with uncertainty. Isabella turned to face him, her eyes locking with his. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was an unspoken connection, something that neither of them could quite explain. Isabella's gaze was direct, yet not intimidated. She didn't seem starstruck by his fame, nor did she seem impressed by his wealth. She simply looked at him as though he were just another person, someone worth getting to know. "Hello," she said, her voice soft yet strong, with a hint of something that suggested she had a story of her own to tell. "Can I help you?" Liam was taken aback for a second. Most people, especially at events like this, were always eager to introduce themselves, to try to impress him. But Isabella was different. "I hope so," Liam replied, a half smile playing at the corners of his lips. "I couldn't help but notice you, standing here by yourself. I thought maybe I should introduce myself." "Is that what you do? Go around introducing yourself to people you don't know?" Isabella asked with a small smile of her own, clearly amused. Liam chuckled, the sound a little rougher than he intended. "I suppose it is." He paused, then added, "I'm Liam Rivers." "Isabella Monroe," she replied simply, extending her hand. "Nice to meet you, Liam." As their hands touched, a strange warmth spread through him. It wasn't the usual electric spark that came with a flirtatious handshake. No, this felt different. It felt real. They spent the rest of the evening talking. For the first time in a long time, Liam found himself genuinely engaged in a conversation. Isabella wasn't talking about her career aspirations or the latest gossip from the social elite. Instead, she talked about real things. Her love for art, her travels, and the simple joys of life that Liam had long forgotten. She didn't seem to care about his wealth or his status. In fact, she hardly seemed impressed by the lifestyle he led. It was refreshing. As the night wore on, Liam couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, he had finally met someone who saw past his money and fame. But as he looked at Isabella, he realized he didn't care about that. For the first time in a long while, he was just Liam. And he liked it. But little did he know, this encounter would change everything. A world apart. The struggles of love. The days that followed that charity gala felt different to Liam. There was an energy to his every moment, a buzz that he couldn't quite shake. Isabella Monroe had somehow left an imprint on him. He found himself thinking about their conversation, replaying the way she had laughed, the way she had looked at him like she wasn't dazzled by his wealth or status, but was simply interested in him. It was strange, exhilarating even. After all, how long had it been since anyone truly saw him? Over the next week, he found excuses to reach out to her. It started with a simple text, nothing too over the top, just a message asking if she wanted to grab a coffee sometime. To his surprise, she agreed. Isabella didn't seem to be running away from him, nor did she seem overly eager either. She was reserved, but not cold. She had a natural grace that made him feel both comfortable and, oddly, vulnerable. Their first coffee date was in a small, cozy cafe tucked away in a corner of New York City. It wasn't one of the trendy, high-end places Liam was used to frequenting. It was quiet, intimate, and real. As they sat across from each other, Liam found himself forgetting about the millions he had made or the contracts he had signed. It didn't matter here. What mattered was the connection, the way their conversations flowed so effortlessly. Your world is so different from mine, Isabella remarked halfway through their coffee. She leaned back, her gaze thoughtful. But you seem, well, tired. Is it all worth it? Liam didn't have a ready answer. He had never been asked that question before. People never cared if it was worth it. They just assumed it was. Wealth, power, prestige, everything came so easily to him that he never stopped to question it. But sitting here with Isabella, he felt the weight of his own choices. Sometimes I wonder if I'm missing something, he admitted, his voice low. You are, Isabella said gently. The best things in life are often the simplest. You might have everything money can buy. But does it give you peace? Happiness? Her words hit Liam harder than he cared to admit. What did he have, really? A penthouse, a few cars, a high-powered job? But was he truly happy? Did all of that make him feel complete? That night, Liam lay awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake off the feeling that something was missing. He didn't know if it was Isabella's honesty or just the stark realization that she might be right. His life, for all its outward perfection, was starting to feel hollow. The thought lingered, gnawing at him. Over the next few weeks, Liam and Isabella continued to meet, always in places outside of Liam's usual circles. They would stroll through Central Park, grab a bite at hole-in-the-wall restaurants, and spend time talking about anything and everything. In many ways, Isabella was a breath of fresh air, free from the constraints of money, fame, and societal expectations. She didn't care about the designer labels on his clothes or the luxury car he drove. She was interested in him, the real him. However, as their bond deepened, the differences between their worlds became more apparent. The invitations to high society galas kept coming, and Liam would reluctantly accept, knowing that they were expected of him. But every time he walked into those rooms, he found himself glancing around, looking for Isabella. She wasn't there. One night, after an extravagant gala, Liam tried to call her, desperate to speak with her. He missed her, but there was no answer. He left a message, his voice tinged with concern. Hey, Isabella. I was hoping we could grab dinner soon. Just let me know when you're free. The next day, there was still no word from her. He tried to brush it off, but the silence gnawed at him. What had changed? Why wasn't she responding? It wasn't until several days later that he learned the reason behind her absence. A mutual friend from the gala told him, Isabella doesn't really fit into your world, Liam. She's not one of your people. She doesn't want to be used or dragged into a life she doesn't belong in. The words stung. They were the truth, but it still hurt. Liam's life had always been so simple. It was the world around him that complicated things. And Isabella didn't belong in that world. He had known it, but it was easier to pretend otherwise. Easier to think that the attraction they shared was enough to bridge the gap between their worlds. But it wasn't. Liam found himself increasingly torn between the life he had built, one of wealth, influence, and luxury, and the quiet simplicity he had discovered with Isabella. She had opened his eyes to a world he had long since forgotten. A world that didn't revolve around money or status, but rather real connections, simple joys, love. But it seemed that the world he belonged to wasn't ready to let go of him. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no word from Isabella. Liam tried reaching out again, but each attempt was met with silence. He felt frustrated. The power and control he wielded in business had no effect on this situation. Money couldn't buy her attention. The thought haunted him. What if he had already lost her? One day, he decided he couldn't wait anymore. He needed answers. He needed to see her. He drove to the last cafe they'd visited together, hoping to find some sign of where she had gone. The place had become his sanctuary, too. It was the only place he felt truly himself, free from the expectations of the outside world. And then, as if by fate, he saw her. Isabella was sitting at a small table by the window, sipping a cup of coffee, just like she had done before. But this time, she wasn't alone. Another man sat across from her, laughing and talking animatedly. Liam froze. A wave of jealousy hit him like a punch to the gut. He had no right to feel this way. They were just friends, right? But seeing her with someone else made him realize something deep within himself. He didn't just want Isabella in his life. He needed her. He took a step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. But before he could reach her, Isabella caught his gaze. Her eyes softened, but there was something else, something that made Liam's heart skip a beat. She wasn't running away anymore. But the question was, could he bridge the gap between their worlds? Could their love survive the pressures of their vastly different lives? The test of time. Love across worlds. Liam stood frozen at the entrance of the cafe, his heart pounding in his chest. Isabella's gaze locked onto his, and for a moment, the noise of the world around him faded away. It was just the two of them. No crowd, no expectations. Just her, sitting there with another man, the very sight of which made his chest tighten in a way he didn't understand. He had told himself he didn't need her. He had convinced himself that their worlds were too different, that their connection, no matter how real, was doomed from the start. But seeing her with someone else, hearing her soft laughter echo across the room, Liam realized how wrong he had been. Isabella's eyes softened, and she gave him a small, almost apologetic smile. It wasn't the smile of a woman who was in love with someone else. It was the smile of someone who had been hurt, who had been waiting for something that Liam had failed to see. The man across from her noticed the shift in the air, glancing over at Liam, who stood awkwardly by the door. With a quick nod, the man excused himself and walked out of the cafe, leaving Isabella alone with Liam. The door closed behind him, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Liam finally found his voice. "I didn't expect to see you here." With him. Isabella stood up slowly, her eyes never leaving his. "I know. I'm sorry you had to see that." She hesitated, then added, "But I think it's time we talked." Liam felt a wave of relief wash over him. She wasn't running away this time. She wasn't trying to avoid him or pretend that everything was fine. Talk. About what? Isabella took a deep breath, the weight of the words she was about to say pressing heavily on her. "About us, Liam. About what we're doing. About what you want. And what I need." Liam's pulse quickened. He had been prepared for this conversation, but now that it was happening, he didn't know what to say. What could he say? How could he explain the mess of emotions and thoughts swirling in his head? For the first time in a long time, he felt vulnerable. He gestured to the empty chairs at the table. "Please, sit down." Isabella sat back down, and Liam followed her, taking the seat across from her. There was a long pause before she spoke again. "Liam, you live in a world I can't be a part of," Isabella said softly, her voice tinged with sadness. "And I don't just mean the money. It's more than that. It's everything. The people you know, the expectations on you, the constant pressure to be someone you're not. I've seen how you struggle with it, and I've seen how you bury yourself in it, convincing yourself it's enough. But it's not." Liam opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. She was right. He had always buried himself in his work, in his empire, because it was easier than dealing with the emptiness inside. But hearing her speak so plainly about it, it made him realize how much he had been avoiding the truth. "I've spent my whole life building this empire, Isabella," he said finally, his voice heavy with frustration. "I've worked for everything I have. But you're right. It's not enough. It's never been enough." Isabella reached across the table and gently placed her hand on his. The simple touch sent a shock through him, and for the first time Liam didn't feel the need to hide. "It's okay, Liam. You don't have to have everything figured out. No one does. But what you need to realize is that you can't keep living this way. You can't keep pretending like money and power will fix everything. They won't." Liam swallowed hard. "But what if it's all I know? What if that's all I can give?" You can give so much more than that, Isabella said softly, her eyes never leaving his. You have love to give. You have kindness to give. You just have to be willing to open up. You have to let someone in. Liam's heart clenched. He had been afraid of that very thing, letting someone in, letting them see the man behind the mask. But Isabella had already seen him. She had seen through the polished exterior, through the walls he had so carefully built. And yet, here she was, offering him a chance to be more, to be real. He leaned back in his chair, staring at her in silence. He had always been so guarded, so self-reliant, never needing anyone. But now, sitting across from Isabella, he couldn't ignore the truth. She was right. He didn't have to have everything figured out. He didn't have to do it all alone. I'm scared, Liam admitted quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared of losing everything. Scared of losing myself. Isabella smiled softly, her eyes full of understanding. I know you are, but you don't have to do this alone. You're not alone in this, Liam. Liam exhaled a breath he didn't know he was holding. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he could let go, like he didn't have to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. Isabella wasn't asking him to change overnight. She wasn't asking him to give up everything he had worked for. She was simply asking him to live. I don't want to lose you, Isabella, Liam said, his voice raw with emotion. I never want to lose you. Isabella squeezed his hand. Then don't. But you have to be willing to fight for us. You have to be willing to be a part of this, to be a part of something real. Liam nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling in his chest. He didn't know what the future would hold, or if they could truly make it work. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid of the unknown. Because with Isabella by his side, he was willing to face whatever came next. They sat there for a long time, the world outside fading into the background as they shared a moment of quiet understanding. For Liam, it was the first time in years that he had truly felt at peace with himself. No more pretending, no more hiding. He didn't know where their relationship would go, or how it would survive the pressures of their different worlds. But one thing was clear: he was no longer the same man who had walked into that cafe just days ago. He was ready to open his heart, ready to fight for what truly mattered. And with Isabella by his side, maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to make it work. The pressure builds, crossing the line. As the days passed after that conversation, Liam found himself reflecting on everything Isabella had said. It wasn't easy to make the transition from his old life, the world of business, power, and luxury, into something more grounded. But for the first time in a long while, he wanted to try. The idea of living for something more than just money or success had taken root deep inside him. Isabella had shown him that. But even as he felt this new sense of possibility, the reality of their vastly different worlds began to weigh heavily on him. He would go to work in the morning, attend meetings, handle his empire, and in the back of his mind, there would always be the question, how does Isabella fit into this? Their relationship, though growing deeper by the day, was beginning to face the strain of his lifestyle. The glamorous world he belonged to didn't mix easily with the simplicity of Isabella's life. She didn't need the luxury, the designer clothes, the parties with people who were only interested in his status. And yet, she also didn't completely fit into his world, one where appearances and connections were paramount. Liam was caught between two lives: his empire, which had defined him for so long, and the quiet, real love he had found with Isabella. Neither world seemed to accept the other fully. In a way, he was still living in two worlds at once. One evening, as Liam prepared for another high-profile charity event, he found himself questioning why he had agreed to go in the first place. It was a fundraiser for a cause he knew little about, but as usual, his presence was required. His publicist had made sure of it. The event would bring attention, bolster his image, and cement his status in the eyes of the elite. But as he slipped into his tailored suit and stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie, he felt a sense of unease. The sharp lines of his suit, the polished shoes, the perfectly combed hair, it was all so familiar, so comfortable. And yet, something inside him was pushing against it. He thought about Isabella, sitting in her tiny apartment in the heart of the city, her world so far removed from the glittering ballroom he would soon walk into. Would she even want to be there? Would she feel like an outsider, like she didn't belong? The thought of her discomfort made his chest tighten. She didn't need this. She didn't need him to prove anything to her. But deep down, he couldn't escape the pressure of his world. The world where he was expected to be a certain way, to act a certain way. As he arrived at the event, the usual crowd was already mingling. There were the same faces, the same shallow conversations, the same pre-packaged smiles. Liam felt a wave of disconnection, as though he was merely going through the motions. He caught up with a few business associates, posed for photos, and pretended to enjoy the evening. But in the back of his mind, Isabella was never far away. It wasn't until later in the night, when Liam stepped out onto the terrace to get some air, that he realized how much he was missing her. The city stretched out below him, the lights twinkling in the distance, but all he could think about was the fact that Isabella wasn't there by his side. He wanted her there. He wanted to share this world with her, to show her that even in the midst of all this opulence, he could be real. But then, as if on cue, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from Isabella. "I've been thinking about us. I think it's time we talked again." The message sent a ripple of nervous energy through him. What did she mean by talked again? Was this her way of saying she wanted to end things? He had been expecting something like this. The realities of their relationship, her world and his, had been getting harder to ignore. The pressure was building. Liam stepped inside, quickly excusing himself from the event and walking toward a quieter space. His hands trembled slightly as he dialed her number. He didn't want to wait any longer. He needed to know where they stood. When Isabella answered, her voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of something else. "Hey Liam, are you busy?" "Not really. Just at this event. I'm glad you texted. I've been thinking about you a lot." He was trying to sound calm, but his nerves were showing. "I've been thinking about us too," Isabella replied. "And I'm starting to feel like we're in different worlds, Liam. I know you've been trying. I see that, but I'm not sure how much longer I can keep pretending that this your world fits with who I am, and I don't want to hold you back." Liam's heart sank. He had feared these words, but hearing them out loud made it worse than he could have imagined. "Isabella, I don't want you to feel like I'm asking you to change. I'm not asking you to be a part of this world if it's not what you want. But I want you. I want us." "I know, Liam, but I don't think it's that simple," she said softly. "You don't have to hide who you are, but I can't just keep fitting into a world that's not mine. I'm happy with what I have, what I've built, but I don't want to lose myself in something that isn't real." The words hit him hard. She wasn't giving up on him. She was giving up on the pressure, the world that he had built, the world that had started to define him in ways he never expected. And yet, part of him couldn't understand why she couldn't just be a part of it. Why couldn't she accept the life he had created? "Isabella, I've never had to think about anything like this before," Liam admitted. "I've always been in control. I've built this world, but it's not the one I want to live in anymore. Not without you." There was silence on the other end, a silence that spoke volumes. Isabella was weighing his words, processing everything he had just said, and then softly she responded, "I know you're not the same person you were, Liam. I see that. But maybe we just need a break, to figure out who we really are, without all the noise." Liam's chest tightened at the thought of losing her, but he knew she was right. They both needed space to figure things out, to find out if their love was enough to bridge the gap between two vastly different lives. "I can't lose you, Isabella," he said quietly, his voice filled with raw emotion. "I'm willing to fight for us, for this." "I know you are, Liam," she replied. "But it's not just about fighting for each other. It's about finding the right balance, and I think we both need to figure out what that is." As they said their goodbyes, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slipping through his fingers. But he also knew that this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. Isabella had shown him that there was more to life than just wealth and power. And now, he was ready to fight for something real, something worth more than any empire. The pressure builds, crossing the line. As the days passed after that conversation, Liam found himself reflecting on everything Isabella had said. It wasn't easy to make the transition from his old life, the world of business, power, and luxury, into something more grounded. But for the first time in a long while, he wanted to try. The idea of living for something more than just money or success had taken root deep inside him. Isabella had shown him that. But even as he felt this new sense of possibility, the reality of their vastly different worlds began to weigh heavily on him. He would go to work in the morning, attend meetings, handle his empire, and in the back of his mind, there would always be the question, how does Isabella fit into this? Their relationship, though growing deeper by the day, was beginning to face the strain of his lifestyle. The glamorous world he belonged to didn't mix easily with the simplicity of Isabella's life. She didn't need the luxury, the designer clothes, the parties with people who were only interested in his status. And yet, she also didn't completely fit into his world, one where appearances and connections were paramount. Liam was caught between two lives, his empire, which had defined him for so long, and the quiet, real love he had found with Isabella. Neither world seemed to accept the other fully. In a way, he was still living in two worlds at once. One evening, as Liam prepared for another high-profile charity event, he found himself questioning why he had agreed to go in the first place. It was a fundraiser for a cause he knew little about, but as usual, his presence was required. His publicist had made sure of it. The event would bring attention, bolster his image, and cement his status in the eyes of the elite. But as he slipped into his tailored suit and stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie, he felt a sense of unease. The sharp lines of his suit, the polished shoes, the perfectly combed hair, it was all so familiar, so comfortable. And yet, something inside him was pushing against it. He thought about Isabella, sitting in her tiny apartment in the heart of the city, her world so far removed from the glittering ballroom he would soon walk into. Would she even want to be there? Would she feel like an outsider, like she didn't belong? The thought of her discomfort made his chest tighten. She didn't need this. She didn't need him to prove anything to her. But deep down, he couldn't escape the pressure of his world, the world where he was expected to be a certain way, to act a certain way. As he arrived at the event, the usual crowd was already mingling. There were the same faces, the same shallow conversations, the same pre-packaged smiles. Liam felt a wave of disconnection, as though he was merely going through the motions. He caught up with a few business associates, posed for photos, and pretended to enjoy the evening. But in the back of his mind, Isabella was never far away. It wasn't until later in the night, when Liam stepped out onto the terrace to get some air, that he realized how much he was missing her. The city stretched out below him, the lights twinkling in the distance, but all he could think about was the fact that Isabella wasn't there by his side. He wanted her there. He wanted to share this world with her, to show her that even in the midst of all this opulence, he could be real. But then, as if on cue, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a text from Isabella. "I've been thinking about us. I think it's time we talked again." The message sent a ripple of nervous energy through him. What did she mean by talked again? Was this her way of saying she wanted to end things? He had been expecting something like this. The realities of their relationship, her world and his, had been getting harder to ignore. The pressure was building. Liam stepped inside, quickly excusing himself from the event and walking toward a quieter space. His hands trembled slightly as he dialed her number. He didn't want to wait any longer. He needed to know where they stood. When Isabella answered, her voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of something else. "Hey, Liam, are you busy?" "Not really. Just at this event. I'm glad you texted. I've been thinking about you a lot." He was trying to sound calm, but his nerves were showing. "I've been thinking about us too," Isabella replied. "And I'm starting to feel like we're in different worlds, Liam. I know you've been trying. I see that. but I'm not sure how much longer I can keep pretending that this your world fits with who I am. And I don't want to hold you back." Liam's heart sank. He had feared these words, but hearing them out loud made it worse than he could have imagined. "Isabella, I don't want you to feel like I'm asking you to change. I'm not asking you to be a part of this world if it's not what you want. But I want you. I want us." "I know, Liam, but I don't think it's that simple," she said softly. "You don't have to hide who you are. But I can't just keep fitting into a world that's not mine. I'm happy with what I have, what I've built. But I don't want to lose myself in something that isn't real." The words hit him hard. She wasn't giving up on him. She was giving up on the pressure, the world that he had built, the world that had started to define him in ways he never expected. And yet, part of him couldn't understand why she couldn't just be a part of it. Why couldn't she accept the life he had created? "Isabella, I've never had to think about anything like this before," Liam admitted. "I've always been in control. I've built this world, but it's not the one I want to live in anymore. Not without you." There was silence on the other end, a silence that spoke volumes. Isabella was weighing his words, processing everything he had just said. And then softly she responded, "I know you're not the same person you were, Liam. I see that. But maybe we just need a break to figure out who we really are without all the noise." Liam's chest tightened at the thought of losing her, but he knew she was right. They both needed space to figure things out, to find out if their love was enough to bridge the gap between two vastly different lives. "I can't lose you, Isabella," he said quietly, his voice filled with raw emotion. "I'm willing to fight for us, for this." "I know you are, Liam," she replied, "but it's not just about fighting for each other. It's about finding the right balance, and I think we both need to figure out what that is." As they said their goodbyes, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slipping through his fingers. But he also knew that this wasn't the end. It couldn't be. Isabella had shown him that there was more to life than just wealth and power. And now, he was ready to fight for something real, something worth more than any empire. The struggle for balance. Coming to terms. The days following that conversation were a blur. Liam couldn't focus. No matter how many meetings he had or how many deals he closed, Isabella's words lingered in his mind like an unshakable echo. The tension between his two worlds, the one he had built and the one he had found with her, was becoming unbearable. Every time he sat in his high-rise office overlooking the city, it felt like he was suffocating. The cold, sleek glass and steel of his empire no longer offered the same sense of security they once did. In fact, it only seemed to amplify his feelings of loneliness. But he was determined not to lose her. Isabella had asked for time to figure things out, and Liam respected that. He understood that they needed space. He needed space. But he couldn't deny the fear that gripped him when he thought about her being away from him. What if she decided it was too much? What if the gap between their worlds was simply too vast to bridge? The following weeks were marked by a profound internal struggle. He kept busy with work, throwing himself into the day-to-day demands of running his empire. But every evening, as the world around him slept, Liam couldn't escape the feeling that something vital was missing. It wasn't the luxury or the fame that weighed on him. It was Isabella. Her absence was a silent void in his life, one that no amount of success or money could fill. He tried reaching out to her a few times, but each time he held back, giving her the space she had asked for. The balance between pushing too hard and giving her space was delicate, and Liam wasn't sure how to navigate it. He was used to being the one in control, but now it felt like everything was slipping through his fingers. And then, one day, everything changed. Liam had just finished a major presentation for an investment deal when his phone buzzed. It was a text from Isabella. "Can we meet?" His heart skipped a beat. The moment he had been waiting for had finally arrived. He quickly replied, agreeing to meet at the same cafe they had been to before. His fingers trembled slightly as he typed out the message. He wanted to make everything right. He wanted to show her that he was ready to change. He was ready to fight for her, for them. When he arrived at the cafe, Isabella was already there, sitting at the same table by the window. She looked up as he entered, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. There was a quiet tension in the air, a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. Liam sat down across from her, his eyes searching her face for any sign of what she was thinking. Isabella smiled softly, her eyes tired but kind. "Hi, Liam," she said quietly. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I've been thinking about you, about us. And I think I finally understand what you've been trying to say. I've been so caught up in my world, my empire, that I forgot what really matters." Isabella's gaze softened, but there was still a distance between them. "Liam, I know how much this means to you. I know how hard you've worked, but I can't be part of a world that isn't true to who I am. I don't want you to change, but I need you to understand something." Liam leaned forward, his heart pounding. "I do understand, Isabella. I do. I've been living for the wrong things, and it's taken losing you to realize that. I've built this empire, but I've built it in the wrong image. It's not just about money or power or prestige. It's about the people you love and the life you choose to live." Isabella was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Then she looked up at him, her expression both pained and hopeful. "You can have both, Liam. You can have your empire, but it can't define you. It can't be everything. If you want us to work, you have to be willing to give up the idea that success is measured by wealth and status alone. There's more to life than that." Liam nodded, the weight of her words settling deep inside him. "I know, and I want to show you that I can be more than what this world has made me. I want to show you that I can be the person you need, someone who's not just focused on making money, but someone who is truly present, someone who can love you in the way you deserve." Isabella's eyes glistened, a tear slipping down her cheek before she quickly wiped it away. "Liam, I want to believe you. I really do. But I need to know that you're ready to make this work. Not just for me, but for you too." Liam took a deep breath. He had spent so much of his life focusing on what the world expected of him, on what he thought he needed to be. But now, in this moment, all he could think about was Isabella. The love he had found with her was real, something worth fighting for. And for the first time, he wasn't just fighting for her, he was fighting for himself too. "I am ready," he said, his voice steady and full of resolve. "I don't want to keep living in the shadow of my success. I want a life that's real. And that life is with you." Isabella's gaze softened, and for a moment they simply sat in silence, letting the weight of his words sink in. Then, with a smile that made Liam's heart race, she reached across the table and took his hand. "I want that too, Liam," she said quietly, "but we need to take it one step at a time. I need you to prove to me that you're willing to give up the things that have defined you for so long, that you're ready to make space for the kind of life that we can build together." Liam squeezed her hand, his heart swelling with emotion. "I will, Isabella. I promise. I'll prove it to you. I'm ready." They sat there for a long time, letting the conversation settle between them. For the first time in weeks, Liam felt a sense of peace. The world outside was still buzzing, still full of expectations and demands, but in that moment, all that mattered was Isabella. And whatever came next, he was ready to face it with her by his side. It wasn't going to be easy. The road ahead was uncertain, full of challenges, but Liam knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to give up on her. Not now, not ever. He was ready to fight for the life he had always dreamed of, one that didn't revolve around status or wealth, but around love, connection, and the kind of happiness he had never thought possible. With Isabella, he was finally ready to begin. The ultimate choice: finding a way. The weeks following their conversation were both exhilarating and challenging for Liam. The promise he made to Isabella echoed in his mind every day as he worked tirelessly to strike a balance between his two worlds. The world he had built, his empire, his name, the lifestyle that came with it, was hard to let go of, but he was trying. Every decision he made now was different. He began to make choices that were not based on wealth or power, but on what truly mattered: Isabella, their future, and the life they could build together. But it wasn't easy. There were days when the pressure of his business weighed heavily on him. His empire demanded his attention, his presence, and the constant barrage of expectations from both colleagues and investors left him drained. There were moments when the temptation to slip back into his old ways, to retreat into the comfort of his high-powered life, was overwhelming. He had spent so many years perfecting the art of success. It was hard to know if he could truly change. And then, there were the moments with Isabella. The quiet dinners in small, unassuming restaurants, the long walks through the park, the way her hand felt in his. Those moments were what kept him going. They were his reminder of why he was fighting so hard. But even as their connection grew deeper, Liam could sense the tension building. Isabella was watching him closely, waiting to see if the changes he promised would stick. She was patient, but there was a quiet apprehension in her eyes whenever they spoke about the future. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that he was truly ready to make the kind of life they both deserved. But she also knew that the world he had built was a powerful force, one that could pull him away just as easily as it had brought him success. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings, Liam found himself staring out over the city from his penthouse. The lights below twinkled like a sea of stars, each one a reminder of how far he had come. He thought about Isabella, her laughter, her honesty, her refusal to be impressed by his wealth. She had shown him a world he had long since forgotten, one where love and connection were the real measure of success. But that world, his world, was still here. It was still his responsibility. It was still his to manage. And the pressure was building. He knew he needed to make a decision, a real one, a decision that would define the rest of his life. He couldn't keep living in two worlds. Eventually, something would have to give. As if on cue, his phone buzzed, breaking his thoughts. It was a text from Isabella. "Liam, can we talk?" His heart skipped a beat. He had been expecting this. There had been an unspoken tension between them for weeks now, and he knew this was coming. He quickly typed back, agreeing to meet her at their usual spot. When he arrived at the cafe, Isabella was already sitting at their table, her posture straight, but there was a sadness in her eyes that Liam hadn't seen before. She smiled when she saw him, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hi," she said softly. "Hey," Liam replied, sitting down across from her. He studied her face, trying to read what was going through her mind. Something was different, something he couldn't quite place. "I've been thinking a lot," Isabella began, her voice steady but heavy, "about everything, about us, and I think I've come to a decision." Liam's chest tightened. He had feared this moment, but now that it was here, he didn't know what to say. His mind raced with 1,000 questions. Was she ending things? Had the pressure finally become too much for her? He reached out, his hand hovering just above hers. "Isabella, whatever it is, you know I'm willing to work for it. For us. I'll do whatever it takes." She looked at him, her eyes searching his. "I believe you, Liam. I really do. But here's the thing. I can't be with someone who is torn between two worlds. I need to know, once and for all, which world you want. I can't keep waiting for you to choose." The words hit him like a ton of bricks. It was the ultimatum he had feared, the one he knew was coming, but had hoped he could avoid. She was right, of course. She couldn't keep waiting for him to make up his mind. "I don't want to lose you, Isabella," Liam said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I also don't want to lose everything I've worked for. This empire, this life, it's all I've known. It's what I've built." "I know, Liam," she said quietly, "and I respect that. But here's the truth. You can't have both, not in the way you want. You can't have the life you've built and the love you want if you're not willing to change. You can't have everything. Liam's heart ached at the finality in her words. He had spent so much time convincing himself that he could make both worlds work, that he could keep the empire and have the love he found with Isabella. But she was right. He couldn't have it all. Not the way he had been living. There was a long pause between them. The world outside continued to move. But for Liam, everything seemed to stop. He was at a crossroads. The two roads stretched out before him, one leading to the world of power and status he had built, the other to a quieter, simpler life, a life with Isabella. "Isabella," Liam said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "I've spent my entire life chasing success, but I've come to realize that it's not enough. I don't want to be that man anymore, the one who's only defined by his wealth and status. I want something real. And that something, that's you. I choose you." Isabella's eyes filled with tears as she reached for his hand. "You mean it?" "I do," Liam said firmly. "I choose you, Isabella. I choose our future together." The weight of his decision lifted from his chest, and in that moment, Liam knew he had made the right choice. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be simple. But he was ready to let go of his past, to embrace a future that was filled with love, honesty, and the kind of happiness he had never known. With Isabella by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next together. The road ahead. Starting a new chapter. The days following Liam's decision were some of the most transformative of his life. He had made a choice, not just for Isabella, but for himself. The life he had once believed was the pinnacle of success, the empire he had built, the wealth and power he had accumulated, no longer held the same significance. Instead, he was learning to value what truly mattered: love, connection, and living authentically. But while Liam had made his choice, the journey to reconcile his old world with the life he now wanted was not going to be easy. There would be obstacles ahead. His business, his empire, his obligations, these were not things he could simply walk away from, but he was determined to find a way to make it all work. He knew he couldn't have everything in the way he once had, but he also knew that he didn't need to give up everything. Isabella had always told him that love and happiness didn't have to come with a price tag. She believed that life could be rich in ways that money couldn't measure. And now, Liam was starting to understand what she meant. But it wasn't just about walking away from his past. It was about taking the best parts of it and integrating them into a new, more balanced life. A life with Isabella. As Liam spent more time with her, he began to realize how much he had been missing in his life all these years. He had been so consumed by his empire, by the desire to control everything around him, that he had forgotten what it was like to be present. Isabella had shown him how to savor the small moments, the quiet evenings, the simple joys, the laughter that came from sharing a meal, the conversations that had nothing to do with business. It wasn't all easy, though. Every time Liam went into the office or sat down for another high-stakes meeting, the temptation to slip back into his old ways loomed. There were moments when he felt like he was playing a role, pretending to be the person he used to be: distant, detached, consumed by the bottom line. But Isabella's words always echoed in his mind. You don't have to choose between love and success. You just have to choose what's worth fighting for. And Liam was ready to fight. But as much as he tried to carve out a life with Isabella, the world he had once dominated kept pulling at him. There were constant demands from his business partners, investors, and employees. There were opportunities he couldn't ignore, potential deals that could take his empire to even greater heights. For a moment, he wondered if it would be impossible to strike that delicate balance between his past and his present. One day, after a particularly long meeting, Liam found himself standing by the window of his office, staring out at the skyline. It was a view he had seen 1,000 times, but today it felt different. It felt distant, like he was seeing it through someone else's. He could feel the weight of the decisions he had to make, the future of his company, the legacy he wanted to leave, and most importantly, the life he wanted to build with Isabella. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Liam, there's someone here to see you," his assistant said from the doorway. "Send them in," Liam replied, turning away from the window. When the door opened, Liam wasn't expecting to see Isabella standing there, looking more composed than he had seen her in a while. She smiled at him, but her eyes held a quiet determination. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, her voice steady. "No, of course not," Liam replied, standing up from his desk. "What's going on?" "I wanted to talk," she said, walking toward him. "About us. About what's next." Liam's heart skipped a beat. It was the conversation they had both been avoiding, the one he knew was coming, but didn't want to have. He had been so focused on trying to make things work with her, trying to balance everything, that he hadn't taken a moment to truly think about the long-term implications of their future. "Sit down," Liam said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. He knew this wasn't going to be an easy conversation, but he was ready for it. Isabella sat down, her posture tense but composed. "Liam, I know you've been trying, and I know how hard it is to let go of everything you've built. But I need you to understand something. I want us to have a future together. I want to build something real with you, but I can't keep waiting for you to figure it out. I need to know that you're fully committed to us." Liam swallowed hard. "I am committed, Isabella. I want this more than anything, but I can't just abandon everything. This empire, the business, it's not just my livelihood. It's a part of who I am. But I'm willing to make changes. I'm willing to find a way to balance it all. For you." Isabella's eyes softened, but there was still a hint of skepticism. "I don't want you to choose between me and the business. I want you to choose what makes you happy, what makes us happy. But if the business is always going to come first, Liam, then I don't know if I can continue this. I don't want to keep feeling like I'm fighting for your attention. I want to be part of your life, not just the background of it." The words hit him harder than he expected. He had known this day was coming, but hearing her speak so plainly about it made it feel so much more real. The truth was, he had been living in two worlds for so long that he hadn't realized how much he was losing in the process. "I don't want to lose you, Isabella," Liam said, his voice firm but filled with emotion. I'm trying to change, to find a way to make it all work. I know I've been distant at times. I know I've let the business take over, but I'm ready to put us first. I want us to build a life together, one where we're both happy, where we both have what we need." Isabella's gaze softened, and for the first time in a while, Liam saw the warmth return to her eyes. She reached across the desk, taking his hand in hers. "I believe you, Liam. I really do. But we have to keep working on this together. No more distractions, no more living in two worlds. It's time to build a life we both want, and I'm willing to do that with you." Liam nodded, his heart swelling with relief. "I'm in, Isabella. I promise. We'll figure it out together." As they sat there, hands intertwined, Liam knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But for the first time in his life, he knew what he wanted. He wanted a life with Isabella, a life that was real, filled with love, connection, and shared dreams, and he was ready to fight for it. Together, they would start a new chapter, a new beginning, building a life together. The weeks that followed Liam's promise to Isabella were both fulfilling and challenging. It was a new chapter in his life, one where he had chosen to live in alignment with his values, not just his ambitions. For the first time in years, he felt truly at peace. The empire he had built, the one that had once defined him, was still there, but it no longer consumed him. Liam's world had always been fast-paced, full of meetings, deals, and relentless demands. But now, he was learning to slow down. He was carving out space for Isabella and for himself, not just as a businessman, but as someone who could embrace the simple joys of life. It wasn't easy, of course. The temptation to fall back into old habits was always there. There were days when the weight of his responsibilities felt suffocating. The phone calls, the emails, the never-ending pressure to perform it all came rushing back. But with Isabella by his side, he had found the strength to push back. He would check in with his team, delegate tasks, and set boundaries. He made a conscious decision to leave the office at a reasonable hour, to spend evenings with Isabella, enjoying quiet dinners and long conversations. He was committed to being present, and Isabella, with her unwavering support, was there through it all. She understood the complexities of Liam's life, and while she had once been uncertain about his ability to change, she now saw the genuine effort he was making. They had their challenges, of course. It wasn't easy to completely let go of the world that Liam had spent years building, but they were learning together how to blend their worlds, how to make room for both love and success, without one overshadowing the other. One evening, as Liam and Isabella sat in the living room of his penthouse, a rare moment of stillness settled over them. The city lights sparkled through the large windows, casting a soft glow across the room. They were curled up on the couch, sipping wine and discussing their future, something that had once seemed impossible to imagine in the chaos of Liam's old life. "I've been thinking," Isabella said, breaking the silence, "about the future, about us, and I think I'm ready for something more, something bigger than this." Liam looked at her, his heart racing. He had always thought he knew what he wanted. He had spent so much time chasing success, building an empire, but now, as he listened to Isabella, he realized that his idea of success had changed. His life had changed. "What do you mean?" Liam asked softly. His curiosity piqued. Isabella smiled, her eyes sparkling. "I mean, I want to start something together. Not just live off your success. I want to build something with you, something that reflects both of us, something that's ours." Liam's chest tightened at the thought. It wasn't just the idea of business. He had always been a businessman, but it was the idea of partnership, of building something meaningful with the woman he loved. The thought of creating something from scratch, not because it was about the money or the prestige, but because it was about them, was exhilarating. "I'm in," Liam said, his voice filled with resolve. "Whatever it is, I'm with you. Let's do it. Together." Isabella's smile widened, and in that moment, Liam knew that this was the new beginning he had been searching for. It wasn't about the empire he had built or the wealth he had accumulated. It was about creating something that mattered, something that had heart, something that would reflect the life they were building together. As the months passed, Liam and Isabella began to plan. They didn't rush into anything. They took their time, discussing their passions, their dreams, and what they both wanted from life. They wanted to create a company, something that would give back to the community, something that would combine their shared values of authenticity, love, and sustainability. It wasn't about making billions, it was about making a difference. The idea was simple, but powerful. A company that focused on ethical, sustainable fashion. A company that not only sold high-quality products, but also empowered the people who made them. They envisioned a brand that celebrated individuality, creativity, and integrity. It was a direct reflection of who they were becoming, a couple who valued more than just the bottom line. They worked tirelessly, together, and with a small team of passionate individuals who shared their vision. Liam used his experience in business to help structure the company, leveraging his network and knowledge to get it off the ground. But Isabella's passion, her drive, and her creative vision were the heart of it all. She brought the soul of the company to life, designing pieces that were not just beautiful, but meaningful. Each piece told a story. Each design had a purpose. It was a blend of fashion and philanthropy, of style and substance. But even as their new business began to take shape, there were moments of doubt. Liam sometimes found himself questioning if he was doing the right thing. Was he truly ready to step away from the business world he had built for so long? Was he making a mistake? Isabella could see the struggle in his eyes, and when it came time for him to voice his concerns, she simply took his hand and said, "We're in this together. We're doing this because it feels right. We're not chasing success. We're creating something we believe in." Her words were always the reassurance he needed. Together, they had found a new definition of success, not measured by the numbers in a bank account or the size of an empire, but by the impact they made on the world around them. As their company began to grow, Liam couldn't help but reflect on how far he had come. From the man who had been defined by his wealth and status to the man he was becoming, a man who was living with purpose, with love, and with integrity. He had found balance. He had found peace. And most importantly, he had found Isabella. In her, he had found everything he had been searching for, a love that didn't depend on power or money, but on connection, honesty, and a shared vision for the future. It wasn't a perfect life. There were still challenges, still moments of doubt, but for the first time in a long time, Liam felt like he was on the right path. A path that didn't just lead to success, but to happiness, fulfillment, and the love of his life. Together, they were building a future that was far more meaningful than anything Liam had ever imagined. And that, he realized, was worth more than all the wealth in the world. Facing the future. Strength in unity. The business continued to grow, slowly but surely. The brand they had built together was gaining traction, not just because of the high-quality products they created, but because of the authenticity behind them. People could sense the passion, the commitment, and the purpose that Liam and Isabella poured into their work. It wasn't just another luxury brand. It was a movement, a shift towards something more meaningful, something grounded in integrity and love. As their company flourished, so did their relationship. Every milestone they reached, every new store opening, every glowing review from customers was a testament to their hard work, and it was something they celebrated together. But it wasn't just about the business. It was about them, about how they had grown together, learned from each other, and supported one another through every high and low. However, as with any journey, challenges arose. Running a business from the ground up was not without its hurdles. The competition grew fiercer, the stakes higher, and the demands even more intense. There were late nights when they would be in the office, reviewing designs or strategizing about the next step. There were moments when the pressure would mount and the long hours would take a toll. But in those moments, they always had each other. They knew how to lean on one another, how to communicate through the stress, and how to find balance. One evening, after an especially grueling day at the office, Liam and Isabella sat together on their balcony overlooking the city. The noise of the world below felt distant as they relaxed into the stillness of the night. "Do you ever wonder," Isabella asked, her voice soft, "how we got here? I mean, everything feels so surreal sometimes." Liam smiled as he took a sip of his drink. "Every day. But I wouldn't change a thing. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. We're building something real, something that feels true to who we are." Isabella nodded, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. "I think that's the most important thing, isn't it? To stay true to ourselves. Even when the world tries to pull us in different directions. We've been tested, Liam, in more ways than one, and we're still standing." The warmth of her words wrapped around him like a blanket. It was true. They had faced their fair share of obstacles both as individuals and as a couple. They had overcome the doubts, the challenges, the sacrifices. But through it all, their love had remained strong, and their bond had deepened. Liam took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "We've made it this far because we've never given up on each other, and we won't. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Isabella smiled, her heart full. "Together," she repeated, as though the word held all the weight of their shared journey. Just then, the phone rang, breaking the tranquility of the moment. Liam glanced at the screen and saw the name of one of his business partners flashing. He sighed, but picked up the phone, knowing that there would always be more work to do. "Liam," his partner's voice crackled through the phone. "We've got some urgent news. We've got a potential investor interested in a big deal, but we need to move fast." Liam nodded, his mind already shifting back into business mode. He excused himself and stepped into his office, closing the door behind him. As he listened to the details of the potential deal, his thoughts briefly drifted to Isabella. She had always understood when these moments came up when business demanded his attention. She never complained. She had learned to navigate the complexities of their life together with patience, and for that, he was deeply grateful. When the call ended, Liam sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He had come a long way from the man who used to be consumed by these types of calls, these types of deals. But now, as he glanced at the door leading back to Isabella, he felt something different. He didn't have to choose between his business and his love anymore. He had found a way to make both work without one overshadowing the other. Still, there was no denying the weight of the responsibility that came with it all. He wasn't just running a business, he was running a legacy, something that would live on long after he was gone. It was something that could change lives, make a real impact on the world, and provide for the future he and Isabella were building. But even with all that, he knew that his first priority had to be their life together. The love they had for each other and the life they had built was what kept him grounded. It was what mattered the most. The next morning, as Liam and Isabella sat together at breakfast, he couldn't help but reflect on the journey they had been through. From the man who once viewed his wealth as the measure of his worth to the man sitting at the table, sharing his life with someone who loved him for who he was, not what he had, was nothing short of extraordinary. He had grown not just as a businessman, but as a person. "Are you okay?" Isabella asked, breaking his reverie. Liam looked at her, his eyes softening. "Yeah, I'm more than okay. I'm happy. And I don't just mean because of the business. I mean because of you. You've made me realize that success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about who you become in the process." Isabella smiled, her heart swelling at his words. "I feel the same way. We've been through so much, Liam, and every day I'm more certain that we made the right choice. I believe in us. I believe in our future." The room was filled with an easy silence, a contentment that both of them had worked so hard to achieve. The road ahead wouldn't be without its challenges. There would be moments of doubt, moments of struggle. But as they sat there, together, they both knew that they were ready for whatever came next. Because they had each other. And that, more than anything, was the foundation of their success. As Liam reached across the table to take her hand, he knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. They had already built so much, but the best was yet to come. Together, they would face the future, side by side. The strength of their love, embracing the journey ahead. As the months turned into a year, Liam and Isabella's business continued to thrive. Their brand, built on authenticity, sustainability, and love, was beginning to make waves in the industry. They were no longer just a couple navigating the complexities of business and personal life. They had become partners in the truest sense of the word. They shared everything, the triumphs, the challenges, and the dreams of what lay ahead. But even in the midst of success, they never lost sight of the most important thing, the love they had for each other. They had built something remarkable, yes, but what made it truly special was the way they had done it together. They weren't just two people in a relationship who happened to be working on a business. They were collaborators, co-creators, balancing the demands of their respective worlds while remaining firmly rooted in their connection to each other. Yet, even as their dreams flourished, Liam knew that the road ahead was still full of challenges. He wasn't naive. Success was not a guarantee, no matter how much they poured into their work. And there were days when the weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. Running a business with someone you love is different. It's not just about making the right calls in the boardroom. It's about ensuring that you are still making the right choices for your relationship, for the life you've worked so hard to build. One evening, as they were wrapping up a particularly long day of meetings and planning sessions, Liam found himself thinking about how much had changed since the early days. He was sitting on the balcony of their home, looking out at the New York skyline that had once felt so familiar and distant. Isabella joined him outside, her presence bringing a sense of calm. She smiled as she sat next to him, a slight breeze lifting her hair. "You look deep in thought." Liam chuckled softly, turning to look at her. "I guess I'm still processing everything. It's strange, isn't it? How much can change in such a short amount of time?" Isabella reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. "It's amazing how far we've come. I've watched you grow, Liam. You've become someone who's not just focused on success, but on what truly matters. And I'm proud of you, of us." He squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of her words. "I couldn't have done it without you, Isabella. You've been the anchor, the one who keeps me grounded. Without you, I don't know where I'd be right now." Isabella smiled, her eyes softening. "You would have figured it out. You always do. But I'm glad I'm here with you. I'm glad we're building this life together." Liam took a deep breath, his mind drifting back to the time before all of this, the time when he was consumed by his empire, when he didn't think he needed anything other than success. Back then, he had been living in a world of his own making, a world that had left little room for anything or anyone else. But now, with Isabella by his side, everything had shifted. It wasn't just about the money or the recognition anymore. It was about living a life that reflected their values, their love, and their shared commitment to making a difference in the world. "Do you think we've really found balance?" Liam asked, the question lingering in the air between them. "I mean, we've made so much progress, but it's not always easy. I still feel like I'm being pulled in 100 different directions." Isabella tilted her head, thinking for a moment. "I think balance isn't something you just find and then have forever. It's something you create every day, together. And we're doing that. We've learned to be flexible, to adjust when things get too overwhelming. But the most important thing is that we're not doing it alone." Liam smiled at her, her words resonating deeply with him. They had faced so many challenges, both in their personal lives and in the business. But through it all, they had stood by each other, learning to adapt and grow, side by side. "I've always had this idea of control," Liam said softly, his voice tinged with vulnerability. "I've always thought I had to have everything figured out, to keep everything in order. But with you, I'm realizing that sometimes it's okay to let go. It's okay to trust. Trust you. Trust us." Isabella reached up to gently cup his face, her touch tender. "And you're not alone in this. You never have been. You just had to realize it. We're in this together, Liam. Always." Her words were a gentle reminder that the foundation of everything they had built was not just their hard work, but their trust in one another. It was their willingness to embrace vulnerability, to allow themselves to be imperfect, and to understand that love wasn't about perfection. It was about being there, day in and day out, even when things got tough. As the weeks went on, the business continued to thrive, and their personal lives remained rooted in the same values that had brought them together in the first place. They took time to travel, to explore new places and cultures, and to take in the beauty of the world around them. But even as they enjoyed these moments, they never lost sight of the commitment they had made to each other. One evening, as they sat together in their office, reviewing their next big project, Isabella leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "I think it's time," she said quietly. Liam raised an eyebrow, a curious smile forming on his lips. "Time for what?" Isabella grinned. "Time to expand. We've been so focused on what we've built here, but there's a whole world out there that needs to see what we're doing. It's time to take the next step." Liam's heart raced at the thought. This was it, the next chapter, the next challenge. But as he looked at Isabella, he felt a rush of excitement. This was their time. They had built something incredible, and now it was time to share it with the world. "I'm in," he said, his voice filled with determination. "Let's do it, together." And so, with a renewed sense of purpose, Liam and Isabella prepared to take the next step in their journey. They knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. There would be more obstacles, more challenges, and more moments of doubt. But they also knew that no matter what came their way, they had each other. They had built a life filled with love, success, and a deep sense of fulfillment. And as they faced the future together, they knew that this was only the beginning of something even greater. Because together, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. Pushing forward, the power of unity. The next phase of their journey began with a renewed sense of energy. The decision to expand their business was not just about growing their empire, but about amplifying their values, their message, and their mission. Liam and Isabella were no longer just running a company. They were creating a legacy. It wasn't about the bottom line anymore. It was about making a meaningful impact on the world, about sharing the love and passion they had cultivated in their own lives with others. In the weeks following their decision to expand, Liam found himself in an exhilarating whirlwind of meetings, travel, and new partnerships. While the hustle and bustle of the business world was nothing new to him, this time it felt different. He wasn't just doing it for himself. He was doing it for them, for the future he and Isabella had decided to build together. But even as the momentum grew, Liam was keenly aware of the delicate balance they were trying to maintain. The pressures of their expanding business were mounting, and the long hours were starting to take a toll. There were moments when it felt like everything was moving too fast, and for a brief second, he wondered if he could keep up with it all. Isabella, ever the steady presence in his life, could sense when things were getting too overwhelming. She was always there to offer a calming word, to remind him that they had come this far together, and they would keep moving forward as a team. One evening, after a particularly intense day of meetings, Liam returned home to their apartment to find Isabella waiting for him. Her smile was warm, and there was a sense of peace in her presence that immediately put him at ease. He walked over to her, taking her hand and pulling her into a tight embrace. "I don't know how you do it," Liam muttered, his voice tinged with exhaustion. "I feel like I'm running on empty sometimes. I'm afraid I'm losing sight of why we started all this in the first place." Isabella gently pulled back, looking him in the eyes. "You're doing it because you believe in what we're building. And I believe in you, Liam. But we can't forget to take care of each other along the way." Liam nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. "I don't want to lose sight of what matters. I want us to succeed, but I don't want to lose ourselves in the process. I want to make sure that what we're doing reflects the life we've built together, the love, the trust, the balance." Isabella smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "We will. We're not in this alone. And if we ever lose our way, we'll find it together." It was moments like this that reminded Liam of what he had fought for all along. His success, his empire. It was all important, but it wasn't the most important thing. What mattered most was the life he and Isabella shared. It was the love they had for each other, the way they supported and nurtured each other's dreams, that made everything worth it. The next day, they made a point to sit down and reevaluate their priorities. They had come so far, but it was important to maintain the balance they had worked so hard to create. They set boundaries for their work schedule, agreed to take more time for themselves, and promised to never lose sight of their shared goals. Their commitment to each other and to the values they held dear would continue to guide their decisions moving forward. As the months passed, their business flourished even more, with new investors showing interest, new customers becoming loyal supporters, and the brand gaining recognition across the globe. But more than the external success, Liam and Isabella continued to thrive in their personal lives. They were able to travel, explore new places, and enjoy moments of calm amidst the chaos. Their relationship remained at the center of it all, always grounded in mutual respect, love, and a shared vision for the future. One evening, as they sat together in their office, reviewing their latest expansion plans, Isabella turned to Liam with a soft smile. "You know, we've come a long way since we first started this journey. Do you remember when we had no idea how we were going to make it work? When it seemed impossible?" Liam chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "How could I forget? We were both so unsure of ourselves back then. I don't think either of us thought it would be easy. But here we are." Isabella nodded, her eyes sparkling with pride. We've worked so hard, Liam, but we've also learned a lot along the way. The business is just one part of the journey. The rest of it, the love, the trust, the shared dreams, that's what keeps me going. Liam reached across the desk and took her hand in his. I feel the same way. This what we have together is the real success. The rest of it is just the icing on the cake. And it was true. As they looked toward the future, Liam knew that no matter what challenges came their way, they would face them together. They had already overcome so much. They had built a life, a business, a future that was reflective of their values and their love for each other. There were still unknowns ahead, but the strength of their partnership gave Liam the confidence that they could handle whatever came their way. The future was uncertain, but it was bright because it was a future they would share, hand in hand. As they stood together at the threshold of this new chapter, Liam couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. They had found balance, love, and purpose, not just in their work, but in each other. And with Isabella by his side, he knew there was nothing they couldn't achieve. The road ahead might be challenging, but it was a road they would walk together, side by side. No matter how far they went, or how much success they achieved, they would always have each other. And that was more than enough. The test of time. Facing new challenges. Liam and Isabella's life together continued to grow, and with it, the challenges they faced. As their business expanded into new markets, they found themselves stretched thinner than they had ever been. The initial excitement of their success had begun to settle into the reality of sustained hard work. But even with all the progress, something in the back of Liam's mind kept pulling at him, an unsettling feeling that they were pushing themselves too far, too fast. The pressures of growth began to show in small ways. Their late-night meetings became more frequent, their weekends less predictable. There was a time when they would spend weekends together exploring the city or taking spontaneous trips to the countryside. Now those moments seemed increasingly rare. They still made time for each other, but it wasn't as easy as it had been when they first started. One evening, as Liam returned home after a particularly exhausting day, he found Isabella in the kitchen preparing dinner. She looked up at him with a soft smile, but the exhaustion in her eyes was hard to miss. "How was your day?" she asked, her voice tinged with a quiet weariness. Liam leaned against the doorway, watching her for a moment. Same old, same old. Meetings, presentations, more contracts. Nothing I can't handle, though. He hesitated, then added, "But I can't help feeling like we're starting to lose sight of why we're doing all of this." Isabella placed the knife down and turned to face him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we've been working so hard to build something big, something meaningful. But we've been so focused on growth, on expansion, that I feel like we're forgetting the little things. The things that made us fall in love with this journey in the first place. We're so caught up in the hustle that we've lost some of the magic." Isabella's gaze softened as she walked over to him. She placed her hand on his chest, the warmth of her touch grounding him. "I get it, Liam. I really do. I've been feeling it too. We've come so far and it's been incredible, but sometimes I feel like we're running in circles, trying to keep up with our own success. We need to take a step back." Liam let out a sigh of relief, grateful that Isabella understood. "I don't want to lose us in the process. I don't want to wake up one day and realize that we've built this empire, but we've lost each other along the way." Isabella smiled, her eyes full of understanding. "We won't lose each other, Liam. We've built this life together, and we'll find a way to keep it that way. But we need to make the time to reconnect, to remember why we started this." As they stood there in the kitchen, the weight of the conversation began to lift. They both knew that they couldn't continue down this path without reassessing their priorities. It wasn't about abandoning their dreams or their business. It was about finding balance, a balance between the work they loved and the life they cherished. The next few days were spent discussing how they could streamline their lives, make more time for each other, and take more breaks to recharge. They agreed to step back from the constant pressure of expansion and focus on nurturing the relationships they had built, both with each other and with their team. It wasn't easy. There were still calls to make, contracts to review, and projects to manage. But they made a promise to each other. No matter what, they would always make time for their love, for their connection. That weekend, they decided to get away from the city. They took a spontaneous trip to the countryside, leaving behind their phones and laptops. It was a much-needed retreat, a chance to breathe, to reconnect, and to remember why they had started this journey in the first place. As they drove through the winding roads, with the vibrant colors of autumn surrounding them, Liam couldn't help but smile. The simplicity of the moment, the wind in their hair, the quiet conversations, the shared laughter, was everything they needed. They didn't need to be constantly connected to the world. They just needed each other. When they arrived at a small, charming cabin in the woods, they unpacked, set up a fire, and spent the evening cooking together. It was a far cry from the glamorous events and high-profile meetings that had once defined their lives. But in that moment, it felt perfect. They shared stories, memories, and dreams for the future. It was the kind of night they had almost forgotten existed in their busy lives, a night of pure, unfiltered connection. The next morning, they woke up early to take a walk through the forest. The crisp air and the sounds of nature were a welcome change from the constant buzz of the city. As they walked hand in hand, Liam realized something. This was the life he wanted, not the noise, the endless demands, or the pressure to constantly prove himself. This quiet, simple life with Isabella was what truly mattered. Later that day, as they sat on the porch of the cabin, watching the sun set over the mountains, Isabella turned to him. "I think we needed this," she said softly, "to remind ourselves of the quiet moments, the ones that make life worth living." Liam nodded, his heart full. "You're right. This is what it's all about. The work, the success, it's important, but it's not everything. We need to take care of each other, and we need to remember to take care of ourselves too." Isabella smiled, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. "We'll find a way to balance it all, Liam. We've come this far, and we're not going to lose ourselves now." The weekend retreat became a turning point for both of them. It was a reminder that even in the face of success, it was important to stop, to breathe, and to appreciate the small moments, the moments that held the true meaning of life. They came back to the city with a renewed sense of purpose, more focused on their relationship and the values that had brought them together. In the months that followed, they continued to navigate the complexities of their growing business while making time for each other. It wasn't always easy, but they had found their rhythm. They prioritized their relationship, knowing that as long as they stayed grounded in love and trust, they could handle anything life threw their way. And as Liam sat with Isabella one evening, watching the lights of the city below, he realized something that filled him with deep contentment. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because they had something far more important than success. They had each other. And that was enough. Embracing the future, moving forward. Together. As the year progressed, Liam and Isabella's business continued to thrive. Their brand had made a significant mark on the industry, and the impact they were making was undeniable. The decision to take a step back and refocus on their relationship had paid off in more ways than they had imagined. They were not only succeeding in business, but also growing stronger as a couple. Yet, despite their achievements, they knew that there were still hurdles to overcome. Every step they took forward seemed to present new challenges. And though they had learned to prioritize their relationship, there was no escaping the pressures of their ambitions. But this time, it was different. They were no longer facing these obstacles alone. They were partners, not just in business, but in life, united in purpose and commitment. One afternoon, as they sat in their office overlooking the city, Liam and Isabella reviewed their plans for the next phase of their expansion. The energy in the room was a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. They had worked so hard to get to this point, and now they were ready to take their company to new heights. But as Liam looked over the projections and plans, something didn't feel quite right. He turned to Isabella, his expression thoughtful. I've been thinking, Liam said, his voice low, about what we're doing next. We've come so far, and we're on the verge of something huge, but I can't help but wonder if we're getting too caught up in the idea of growth. Isabella raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. What do you mean? I mean, we've been pushing so hard to make this company bigger, to reach more people, and I can't help but think, what's the cost? We've been balancing so much already. I don't want us to lose the essence of what made us successful in the first place. Isabella sat back in her chair, considering his words. I understand what you're saying. We've come a long way. But we don't have to compromise who we are in order to succeed. We've always built this business on authenticity, on being true to ourselves and our values. Maybe it's time we pause and reassess what matters most. Liam nodded, grateful that Isabella shared his concerns. Exactly. We need to find a way to grow without losing ourselves in the process. Maybe we need to scale back a little, refocus, and make sure that everything we do aligns with who we are and what we stand for. Isabella smiled, the same fire that had driven their success lighting up her eyes. I agree. Let's take some time to really think about where we want to go next. We've built something incredible, and now it's time to decide how we want to continue growing not just in size, but in impact. In the following weeks, they took a step back from the daily grind. They spent time revisiting their original goals and dreams for the business, reminding themselves of the mission that had driven them in the first place. They had always wanted to create something that not only made a difference in the marketplace, but also had a positive impact on the world. This was their chance to realign with those values and make sure their future growth would reflect their purpose. Their decision to slow down and reassess their next steps wasn't easy. The pressure to expand quickly was always present, and there were moments when they felt the weight of external expectations. Investors, partners, and even employees were eager to push forward, to keep the momentum going. But Liam and Isabella stood firm in their resolve. They knew that their connection to each other and their shared values were more important than any deal or number on a balance sheet. One afternoon, after a long discussion about the future, Liam sat down with Isabella, a sense of calm settling over him. I think we've found our answer, he said, his voice filled with clarity. We're not just building a business, we're building a community of people who believe in what we believe in, and that's where we need to focus. We need to invest in our people, in our mission, and in making the world a better place. Everything else will fall into place. Isabella's eyes softened, and she reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. You're right. We've come this far, and we're not about to lose sight of who we are. We've created something meaningful, and it's time to focus on making that impact even greater, together. And so, with renewed purpose and clarity, Liam and Isabella began the next phase of their journey. They made the decision to refocus their efforts on sustainability, community building, and giving back. They would still grow, but they would do so in a way that reflected their values slowly, purposefully, and with a deep commitment to making a difference. Their business decisions became more intentional, and they prioritized sustainability in every aspect of their operations. From sourcing materials ethically to ensuring fair wages for their employees, they began to cultivate a company culture that mirrored the principles they held dear. They knew that success was not just about profits. It was about creating something that would stand the test of time, something that would leave a positive legacy. As they worked on the next steps of their business, Liam and Isabella also took time to nurture their relationship. They never lost sight of the importance of balance. They made sure to set aside time for each other, whether it was a quiet evening at home or a weekend getaway. Their connection remained the bedrock of everything they did. One evening, after a particularly long week, they decided to take a walk through Central Park. It was one of their favorite activities, just the two of them, surrounded by the beauty of nature, away from the pressures of their busy lives. I think we're on the right path, Isabella said, her voice soft in the evening air. We've learned so much over the past year, about business, about love, about life. Liam smiled, his heart full. I couldn't agree more. We've built something incredible, but the best part is that we've done it together. and that's what matters. As they continued their walk, hand in hand, Liam knew that the road ahead would still be filled with challenges. But with Isabella by his side, he felt ready for anything. They had faced the pressures of success, the demands of the business world, and the uncertainty of the future, and they had done it all together. They had learned that the most important thing was not the destination, but the journey. And as long as they continued to walk that journey together, nothing else mattered. They had everything they needed. The strength of their foundation, a love that endures. As the seasons changed, so did the rhythm of Liam and Isabella's lives. Their business had reached new heights, but the key to their success was no longer in the numbers or the expansion. It was in the strength of the foundation they had built together. Through all the challenges and the pressures of the outside world, they had learned to center their lives on the core values they shared: love, integrity, and a commitment to building something that mattered. The past few months had been a turning point for them. They had learned to strike a delicate balance between their ambitions and their relationship. They had learned to pause, to breathe, and to savor the quiet moments in between the chaos. And in that space, they had found a deeper connection to each other, to their work, and to the future they were creating. But even as their business continued to thrive, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the cusp of something even bigger. The company was not just a brand anymore, it was a movement, a living testament to everything they had worked for. And with that came the inevitable next step: how to keep growing without losing sight of what had made them successful in the first place. One afternoon, as they sat at the kitchen table discussing the next phase of their business, Isabella looked at Liam with a sense of purpose in her eyes. "Liam, I've been thinking a lot about what we've built and what comes next. We've always wanted to do more than just run a business. We've wanted to make an impact, to inspire people, to give back in ways that matter. What if it's time to take that next step?" Liam leaned back in his chair, taking in her words. Over the past few months, he had seen the power of their work, the way it had connected with people, the way it had sparked something in them. They had built a business, yes, but they had also built a community. It wasn't just about selling products. It was about creating something meaningful, something that resonated with people on a deeper level. But what was the next step? How could they take it even further? "I agree," Liam said thoughtfully. "We've already made such a difference, but there's so much more we can do. Maybe it's time we expand our mission. Maybe it's time we not only focus on sustainability and fashion, but look at how we can make an impact in other areas too. Social responsibility, education, empowerment." Isabella's eyes lit up. "Exactly. We've talked about creating a foundation, a way to give back in a meaningful way. We've seen how much of a difference small actions can make. But what if we could use our business as a platform to create change on a larger scale? What if we could empower young entrepreneurs or support communities in need?" The idea hung in the air between them like a spark, one that both of them felt deep within their hearts. It was something they had talked about in the past, something they had always hoped to do, but now it felt like the right moment. They had the resources, the influence, and the drive to make it happen. "We've always said that success means more than money," Liam said, his voice filled with resolve. "It means creating something that leaves a lasting legacy. If we can use our platform to make a difference, to help others reach their potential, then that's the kind of impact we want to make." Isabella smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "I'm so glad you're on the same page. I've been thinking about this for a while, but I needed to know that we were both ready for it. I think we can do something truly special, but it won't be easy." "No, it won't be," Liam agreed, "but we've never backed down from a challenge, and we're not going to start now." In the weeks that followed, Liam and Isabella poured their energy into their new vision. They began to lay the groundwork for a foundation, one that would focus on supporting sustainable development, educating young leaders, and empowering marginalized communities. It was a monumental undertaking, but they were both committed to it. They reached out to partners who shared their values, bringing together a diverse team of people who believed in their mission. They began to establish programs that would provide scholarships, mentorship, and financial support to young entrepreneurs who were working to create positive change in their communities. They also started initiatives that would help underprivileged communities gain access to education, healthcare, and the resources they needed to thrive. As the foundation began to take shape, Liam and Isabella saw firsthand the impact their work was having. They were not just building a business anymore. They were building a movement, one that was changing lives and empowering people to believe in their own potential. The joy and fulfillment they felt from this new chapter was immeasurable. They had found a new sense of purpose, not just in their business, but in the difference they were making in the world. But with success came new challenges. As their foundation gained momentum, the demands on their time increased. They found themselves stretched thinner than ever, with more responsibilities and more people relying on them. There were moments when the weight of it all felt overwhelming, and they had to remind themselves to slow down, to prioritize their relationship, and to take breaks when needed. One evening, after a particularly long week, Liam and Isabella found themselves sitting on their favorite couch, a rare moment of quiet amidst the whirlwind of their lives. Isabella rested her head on Liam's shoulder, and for a moment, the world felt still. "You know," Isabella said softly, "I think we're finally starting to get it right. We've come so far, and we're making a real difference. But more than that, we're doing it together." Liam smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else. You're right. We've found our way. We've built something incredible, not just in business, but in life. And it's all because we've kept each other at the center of it." Isabella looked up at him, her eyes full of love. "No matter what comes next, I know we'll face it together. We've always had each other, and that's the most important thing." Liam kissed the top of her head, his heart full. "We'll face everything together, because what we have, what we're building, is the most important thing of all." As they sat there in the quiet of their home, Liam realized that they had already created a life beyond their wildest dreams. Their love had not only sustained them, but had become the foundation for everything they had built. No matter where the future took them, they knew they would always have each other. And that was more than enough. The legacy, a future built together. The months passed in a whirlwind of growth, reflection, and determination. Liam and Isabella's foundation had gained traction, and their business was continuing to thrive. But it was the work they were doing outside of the company building something meaningful for the future that filled them both with a sense of pride and purpose. Their lives had taken on a rhythm that felt both fulfilling and sustainable. They were not only partners in business, but also in every aspect of life, supporting each other as they worked toward their shared dreams. With every new initiative they launched through the foundation, they could see the positive impact ripple across communities. They were giving opportunities to young entrepreneurs, supporting women in business, and contributing to causes that mattered to them: sustainability, education, and social equality. But even as they built this legacy, they faced the inevitable challenges of balancing their personal lives with their ever-expanding responsibilities. One evening, as they sat together in their office, reviewing the latest developments and planning the next steps for both their business and their foundation, Isabella looked at Liam with a thoughtful expression. "Liam," she began, "I've been thinking a lot about the future. We've come so far, and we've done so much, but I feel like there's still so much more to do. I want to keep pushing, keep building, but I also want to make sure we're taking time to enjoy the life we've created. It's so easy to get caught up in the next big thing, but I don't want to miss out on the present." Liam leaned back in his chair, considering her words carefully. He had noticed the same thing, the way they had become so focused on what was next, on how to keep moving forward, that sometimes it felt like they were forgetting to live in the moment. They had built an empire together, yes, but they had also built a life. And that life needed attention, nurturing, and care, just like any of their other endeavors. "I hear you," Liam said, his voice calm. "I've been so focused on our mission, on what's next for the business, that I've started to feel like we're losing sight of the little things, the things that brought us together in the first place. Our love, our time, our connection. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle, but we have to make sure we're not sacrificing our happiness for success. Isabella smiled, her heart swelling at his words. She had always known that Liam's drive was what had made him successful, but it was his ability to recognize when he needed to shift focus that had made him truly remarkable. They had both learned the hard way that without balance, even the most rewarding work could become a burden. "We'll figure it out," Isabella said with confidence, reaching across the table to take his hand. "I know we can continue to grow, to create change, and to make an impact. But we also have to remember why we started this in the first place. It's not just about success or expansion, it's about the legacy we want to leave behind, not just in business, but in our personal lives too." Liam squeezed her hand, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. He had found someone who not only shared his vision, but also grounded him, reminding him of what truly mattered. They were partners in every sense of the word, committed not only to their work, but to each other. They both understood that the love they shared was the foundation of everything. "I agree," Liam said, his voice full of sincerity. "I think we've reached a point where we need to redefine what success looks like for us. It's not just about growing our business or expanding our influence. It's about creating a lasting impact, yes, but it's also about making sure we're taking care of ourselves and our relationship along the way." The conversation marked a turning point for them. They realized that, while they had built something extraordinary, it was important to preserve the essence of their relationship, the quiet moments, the shared laughter, the adventures they had yet to experience. The foundation they had built together was not just a business or a charity. It was the life they had crafted, and they wanted to make sure it continued to grow in the direction that felt true to them. In the coming months, they began to integrate more balance into their lives. They dedicated more time to each other, whether it was spending weekends exploring new places or taking breaks from the hustle to simply enjoy a quiet evening at home. They made it a point to schedule regular date nights and weekend getaways, ensuring that their connection stayed strong amidst the demands of their work. But they didn't stop pushing forward in their mission. The foundation continued to grow, expanding its reach and impact. They began working with international organizations, launching initiatives in underserved communities across the globe. Their work was touching lives in ways they had never imagined, and the feeling of knowing they were making a difference was indescribable. One afternoon, as they sat together in the quiet of their office, Liam looked at Isabella with a sense of peace. "Do you ever stop and think about how far we've come?" he asked softly. "We've gone from two people with a dream to building something that's bigger than us, and we've done it together." Isabella smiled, her eyes sparkling with love. "I think about it all the time. We've built something incredible, and it's because we've always been in it together. Our success isn't just measured by what we've accomplished, it's about what we've created as a team. A life, a future, and a legacy that reflects who we are." Liam nodded, feeling the truth of her words deep in his heart. They had come so far, but the journey was far from over. They had built a life together, one that was founded on love, integrity, and shared dreams. And no matter what came next, they knew they were ready. They had each other, and together, there was nothing they couldn't face. As they looked toward the future, hand in hand, Liam and Isabella knew that the most important thing was not the legacy they would leave behind in their business or their foundation. It was the legacy they had already created in each other's hearts, a legacy of love, partnership, and a shared commitment to building something meaningful. And as long as they had that, they knew they would always be unstoppable. The world was full of challenges, of uncertainties, but in each other, they had found a foundation stronger than anything they could have built alone, and together, they would continue to face whatever the future held, side by side. The story of Liam and Isabella reflects powerful life lessons about love, balance, and purpose. In the pursuit of success, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters: our relationships, personal well-being, and the values that ground us. The couple's journey shows that success isn't just about growth or achievements, but about staying true to who you are and nurturing the connections that make life meaningful. The most profound lesson here is the importance of balance. While ambition is essential, it's crucial to step back and remember why we're striving in the first place. Prioritizing personal relationships, taking time to recharge, and staying aligned with one's core values are the keys to lasting happiness and fulfillment. Life is not just about building empires. It's about creating a legacy of love, trust, and shared purpose. For anyone feeling overwhelmed by life's pressures, this story serves as a reminder. True success is about the impact we make, not just on the world, but on the people we love and the lives we touch. Find your balance, cherish your relationships, and never lose sight of what brings you peace. And so, as the story of this remarkable millionaire draws to a close, it reminds us all that success is not a straight line. It's full of twists, turns, and moments of doubt. But if there's one thing we can take from their journey, it's this. No matter how difficult the road, there's always a way forward. You don't have to have it all figured out. Take it one step at a time, trust the process, and remember your dreams are just as valid as anyone else's. Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? One day we're struggling, and the next we're standing taller than we ever thought possible. Keep going, no matter where you are now. Keep pushing. Keep believing. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another inspiring journey right here on Stories TH. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your area. I'd love to hear from you. Take a deep breath, relax. Whatever your journey holds, remember you're not alone. I'll be here, cheering you on.